That's good, because you could discover something about your audience right there that nobody was listening. And it's like, 90% of content is never listened to, including this.
Exactly.
Welcome to episode 22 of Rockstar CMO FM. The M is for marketing, the F is for, well, you decide. As you're probably asking yourself, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? I'm your host, Ian Truscott, founding editor of Rockstar CMO, your monthly dose of marketing street knowledge. You can find us at rockstarcmo.com or at Rockstar CMO on Twitter and LinkedIn. This episode was recorded on Friday, the 7th of August. I'm very glad you're here. I hope you've had a good week, that you are staying safe, well, and as sane as you feel you need to be. It's a beautiful day here as we look out from the Rockstar CMO penthouse in London, and I hope it's the same wherever you're listening from. I'm sticking to the usual set list. I'll dip into the virtual page Rockstar CMO and suggest something that rocks from our wonderful contributing community. As promised last week, I'm chatting to Dr. Christine Bailey, CMO of Valitor. Yes, we have a doctor in the house, as Christine has a doctorate in customer insight and is soon to be a published author. We talk about the book that I've had the privilege to get an early peek at, her career, and the work that went into getting that doctorate. And again, we wind down the week with a cocktail and some smart conversation with my friend Robert Rose in the virtual Rockstar CMO bar. Let's get started, shall we? Whilst this podcast is weekly, we call Rockstar CMO a monthly dose of marketing street knowledge because A, we publish on the web and to our newsletter monthly, and B, we call it street knowledge because we like to capture the authentic voices and experiences of real live marketers, avoiding all the listicles, trends and fluff that you might find elsewhere. An excellent example of this is the backstage interview we did with Oliver Pilgerstorfer, CMO of IFS, a huge enterprise software solution company. I've talked about our regular backstage series on here before, where we interview a marketing leader with questions that are designed to give us insight into them as marketers, their careers, and we encourage them to have a bit of fun along the way. One of the questions I ask is who or what are their marketing influencers? And Oliver's reply is fantastic, as he talks about Kotler's 4 Ps. Philip Kotler is considered the father of modern marketing, and back in 1960, coined the 4 Ps, product, price, place, and promotion, a concept that continues to be relevant and discussed today. Perfectly decent answer, if not particularly rockstar. However, Oliver shared his lesson in the 4 Ps through a wonderful story of selling cigarettes when he was at school, how each P was important to this young and, well, slightly illegal entrepreneur in making sales, avoiding excessive stock and detention. It's a super interview, one of the most popular we've published, and I'm hoping to get Oliver on the podcast in a couple of weeks. You can read more stories like this in our backstage series at rockstarcmo.com/backstage, or go to the homepage and click on the appropriate link. And of course, I will include a link to this interview in the show notes at rockstarcmo.com/podcast. And if you have a marketing story to tell or want to nominate your Rockstar CMO for a chat with us, get in touch. Again, there's a link on our homepage. Right, on to the interview as we transition from one Rockstar CMO to another. Dr. Christine Bailey is CMO and Managing Director, SMB UK and Ireland for Valitor, an international payment solutions company. Based in the UK, she has extensive experience in B2B marketing in technology and payments, including leading European marketing functions for Hewlett-Packard and Cisco Systems, as well as some smaller companies. A respected thought leader and motivational speaker with a TEDx talk, Unconventional Career Advice, which I personally suggest you check out. She has been voted #1 woman in tech by B2B Marketing and #3 female influencer in UK B2B Marketing by Analytica. She has a doctorate, DBA, in customer insight from Cranfield School of Management and serves on several advisory boards. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome, Christine, to Rockstar CMO FM. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well. Now, you're a regular contributor to our little publication. Really enjoy your contribution, particularly in the green room. But for people that don't know you, tell us a bit about yourself.
Hi, well, Christine Bailey. I've been in marketing in the technology world and the last 3 years in the payments world, well, basically all my career. So I think once you get to beyond 25, you say 25 plus, don't you? So 25 plus years. I started out, always been passionate about marketing, and I started out my career in Germany, actually. I did a degree in German and business studies, so I started working for Hewlett Packard in Germany in their European Marketing Centre doing public relations. And then I've worked at various companies, big and small, back in the UK since then, always in international roles or UK roles. And I did work for 8 years for Cisco, running their EMEA marketing function. I've had a couple of periods where I've worked for myself. When I was doing my doctorate in customer insight, I was doing consultancy gigs to pay the bills while I was doing my doctorate. Also done some academic work. And for the last 3 years, I joined as Chief Marketing Officer of Valitor, which is an international payment solutions company headquartered in Iceland. And in March this year, so right before COVID lockdown, I also took on the role of Managing Director of the UK business of Valitor, which serves small and medium-sized businesses. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
That's amazing. And I mean, we chat every month about the next publication, if you can help out. And I know you're probably one of the busiest marketers that I know. You're always doing something and getting additional roles. And I think that's fantastic. So the start of your career, what got you into marketing in the first place?
Do you know what? I think right from university, when I did a degree in German and business studies, so that was like half a German degree and half a management science degree, and the pieces of management science I did were mostly marketing and economics based. And right from that moment, when I took marketing classes at university, I thought this is what I want to do.
Oh, excellent.
But it's funny, I did want you, if those of viewers who are old enough to remember the milk round, where you went to it was like a careers fair and you went round the stalls, and I went to the Mars stand because I thought, when you think you want to do marketing, you think fast moving consumer goods, that's that's the place to be. And I said to him, I really want to come into marketing and I really want to go and work in Germany. And he said to me, no, you can't do that. I was like, well, why not? He said, well, first you have to earn your stripes in the UK. If you do really well and there's an opportunity, then maybe perhaps you'll get to go and work in Germany. And I thought, well, that doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And in actual fact, I did a year abroad in Germany as part of my degree, and I made contacts there at Hewlett Packard. And I graduated on the Friday and started work at Hewlett Packard on the Monday. So that's I didn't plan to go into technology, but as soon as I was there, I've never left it.
Yeah. And financial technology, where you are now, is such a hot space. I mean, we've had a couple of interviews with people in fintech, and it's an exciting place to be right now, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So recently, one of the things that I noticed recently is that you gave a presentation at a virtual event, B2B Ignite. How was that? I mean, we've now all gone virtual. Sorry, I should have actually asked, and I had to ask. And we're kind of coming to the end of lockdown. How's that worked out for you as a marketing leader? Is that with working with your team? I mean, you're a geographically spread organization anyway, but how's that worked for you?
Do you know what? It's worked out far better than I thought it might. Coming from the technology world and working for companies like Cisco, I am completely used to remote working, and I've always been in an international environment, so I'm used to not having my team sitting next to me. So for me, it was just a natural transition to start, to work remotely. But for the people in the team, it was a bit of a shock. So, and not everybody is as lucky as me. I've got a fantastic workspace at home. I'm in my log cabin in the garden. But not everybody has that workspace. So you have to learn and managers have to learn new skills about how to manage in a virtual environment. People have to get used to doing things differently. We make enormous use of Microsoft Teams. We have a lot of Teams meetings. And to start with, I was checking in with my managers every single day just to get the sense check, see how everyone was feeling. Now we do it twice a week because this has become the new normal, and I don't think we're ever going to go back to doing things the way that we did before.
Yeah, I blogged about this at the kind of beginning of this thing. I think that's absolutely true. I think virtual, probably a hybrid of office and virtual is probably the way to go, and it feels so natural. And I'm glad that sort of HR policies and IT people have had to catch up through this and give their employees that opportunity, because I think we've enjoyed it, right? In our roles, we've enjoyed that. So I think that's great. So talking about virtual, and I'll go back to the question I was asking just before this. You presented at B2B Ignite, which was a virtual event held recently. How was that for you as a presenter, being involved in a virtual event? What would you say about that?
I think the preparation was different for me. I was very conscious that when you're giving a keynote, obviously you have to rehearse, but when you're on stage, you feed off the energy in the room, and you can look into people's eyes, and you can make that connection. You can make it personal.
Yeah.
And I was very conscious that I couldn't get that personal connection with people by doing it virtually.
Yeah.
So I rehearsed probably even more than I normally would, because I wanted to be looking into the camera. I thought, I can't see people, but they can see me, and I want to at least give them the feeling that I'm talking to them directly. So I'm not looking at my notes. I'm talking directly into the camera, just as I would, on stage. Because some people say, "Oh, virtual, that's easy. You can just look at notes in front of you." I said, "No, I need to be looking into the camera." And also, I think everything has to be exaggerated. You have to exaggerate emotions and emphasis when you're on stage, but I think you have to do that even more, and you have to think about how you're going to engage people in a different way, because there is a chat window. So I was asking people questions and kind of checking in on them and making sure they felt it wasn't just a broadcast. I was, made a conscious effort to try and engage with the audience. But of course, all the plus sides is you don't have to travel.
Yeah.
You can do it from your desk. So lots of pluses as well.
The challenge I have, and I've always had this throughout my career of presenting webinars, is you do miss that direct reading the room kind of feedback about how fast you should be going, whether a joke has worked, and all that stuff.
I have to laugh at my own jokes in case nobody else does.
I do that anyway, so good. But I think that's the biggest thing you miss, isn't it, when you're talking virtually? But to the topic that you were talking about, I thought the topic you spoke about was really interesting. You talked about data enhancing storytelling. Now, I'm a huge fan of content marketing, and we hang out with Robert Rose, one of the kings of content marketing, in my opinion, on Rockstar CMO. What did you mean by that? What were you talking about data and storytelling?
Well, as you know, data and insights are a passion of mine. That's what I did my doctorate in. But data and insights alone are not enough. That's not what moves people. If you're a Game of Thrones fan, which I am, massive Game of Thrones fan, and Tyrion Lannister near the end, near the finale, he asks a rhetorical question. What moves people? And he answers. It's I'm going to see my exact quote. Yes, he says, "There's nothing in the world more powerful than a good story. Nothing can stop it. No enemy can defeat it." And the other quote I love is from Philip Pullman, the famous author, and he says, "After nourishment, shelter, and companionship, stories are the thing we need most in the world."
Yeah, so good.
Coming up with this idea that we know we need to tell stories, but we also need to have some facts and figures, and people tend to default to influencing by facts and figures, although people don't remember them. When I was presenting, I gave a stat that when I was talking about how much data we have in today's world, the infographic from Domo, data never sleeps, just how much goes on in every minute online with data. And I said, but 83% of marketers feel data blind because they're overwhelmed by the sheer volume of data. So later on in the presentation, I said, data alone is just a fact. We don't remember it. And I said, write down in the chat window what percentage of marketers feel data blind. And I'd only put it about 2 or 3 slides before, just to see how many people remembered that stat.
Yeah.
A handful of people were paying attention.
That's good, because you could discover something about your audience right there that nobody was listening. And it's like, 90% of content is never listened to, including this.
Exactly. Yes. And of course, the challenge is when you do a presentation about storytelling and data, if you don't practice what you preach, you're going to get tripped up. So I've got a framework that the best training course I've ever done is from Mandel Communications, and they teach you a framework which has an acronym, SIPAB, SCIPAB, and the S stands for situation, C is complication, I is implication, and then position, action, benefit.
Right.
And as I talk about in the presentation, every good story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Yeah. So most stories start with, once upon a time, if you're talking about a fairy tale. So you're laying out the situation, if to put it in the SIPAB formula. So you talk about the situation, you talk about things that people already knew, just to sort of get familiarity and comfort. So when I did my presentation, I talked about the digital world that we live in, the explosion of data, how many marketing technologies we have at our disposal. Mm-hmm. And then you talk about the middle bit of the story is you add a bit of complexity. What are the implications? What are the complications, the implications? Yeah. And you start laying out a picture of what needs to be overcome, and you add a bit of urgency. Yeah. And then the end of the story is what benefits you're going to get, this picture of this greater and better world that you're going to come to. Yeah. So that's basically, I've always used that framework to build every story, every presentation. Yeah. That's how I built it at Ignite. But the point being as well is that you still need your data points.
Absolutely.
You need to weave them into your story. So how add in data points to describe the situation, to describe the complication, the implications, your position.
That absolutely. I mean, I'm, part of content marketing is writing case studies, for example, and I see a lot of vendors where they write a great case study and it's got a great story, but they don't support it with any data about what the implication. And I think that's a really good example where people tell a great story, but if it's got no data in it, it just feels hollow, doesn't it? It doesn't feel real. Yeah. Now, on that topic of data and insights, and I've been fortunate enough to have a pre-published copy of your book that's coming out that I've been reading. Really good. It's like and I don't want to ruin it for people who are going to read it, but it's like a whistle stop tour of almost every marketing discipline. But at the heart of it is data and insights, and you lead us around where data and insights is important in almost everything we do. Tell us a little bit about the book and the premise behind that.
Yeah, so the book is called Customer Insight Strategies, How to Understand Your Audience and Create Remarkable Marketing. Mm-hmm. And it's, as you say, insight underpins absolutely everything we do in marketing. And some of the things are more obvious, where we would think, well, we can't possibly do that without data and insights. Some are not so obvious. So the book really starts by, again, setting the scene of how marketing has changed so fundamentally. Mm-hmm. And how we need to operate in this modern digital world. And then it kind of starts at the beginning. First of all, what are customer insights? How do you create them? What kind of data sources are you drawing from? And then what do we mean by customer insight? And then it kind of starts the story where we say, well, how do you create a mission statement with purpose? That's really important today. And a value proposition that matters to your customers, that's rooted in insight. How do you use that to create, do segmentation, create personas, and then start generating your content marketing? How do you use it for customer acquisition? How do you use customer analytics for customer development and retention? How do you use insights in social selling, social media? And then, what kind of technology? We have to talk about technology there. What kind of technology do we use? And finally, what are the implications for practitioners?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying it, and I also like the examples. I think you're quite, you're very open about your own journey in Valitor. I think in that that's a big case study that you talk about, isn't it? Your own journey and how you've implemented these things in your own role.
Absolutely. And I really wanted the book to be, a case. I wanted to have lots of practical examples. So I wanted it to be a book by practitioners for practitioners. So I've fortunate enough to have a very large network of fabulous marketeers around the world. So I interviewed about 33 people for the book in each different discipline to get their expert opinions and get their case studies.
Yeah. And how was the process? I mean, you've done something that, I know lots of people that have got a book inside them, and one day it will come out, especially in marketing. I mean, so many people have written great marketing books. What was the process like for you? What was the discipline of writing the book? How long did it take you and stuff like that?
Well, first of all, I have to say, when I started doing the doctorate in 2004, the main motivation for me doing the doctorate was I wanted to have content for a book.
Right.
Because way back before then, I'd been on a Tony Robbins course, where you walk over the hot coals in bare feet, and I sort of reset the bar. What do I want to be? I don't just want to be a marketing director. I want to be a marketing guru. And then I started thinking, okay, well, what does that look like? How will it feel? How will I know when I've become a marketing guru? And I thought, well, I should publish a book. And then I thought, well, I need content. Where am I going to get content for? And I kind of put it to one side. And then I was having dinner with Moira Clark, who's a professor of marketing at Cranfield at the time. And she said to me, you should do a doctorate in marketing.
Yeah.
And of course, instantly all the objections start coming into your head. It's like, well, I'm not clever enough. I can't afford that. I haven't got the time.
Yeah.
And then this other voice is going, that'll give you content for the book. And so somehow how I found a way. And I always planned to write the book when I finished the doctorate. But, life has a habit of having other plans. So when I finished the doctorate, I was 9 months pregnant and been offered this fabulous job at Cisco. So the book went completely out of the window at that point. But I came back to it. I was speaking at a marketing conference, and there was a scout from Kogan Page who'd been sent along to look for new authors. And they listened to my marketing presentation and came up to me afterwards and said, have you ever thought about writing a book? And I was like, funny you should say that. And they said, well, do you have any ideas about what the book will be about? I went, yep.
Wow.
So basically you have to then write a very detailed proposal of what's going to be in the book. And for me, that was pretty easy because that book idea had been brewing for so many years. 12 years after I originally intended to do it, but I'd like to think it's a much better book now.
I was going to say that. Well, I was going to say two things. One is I had that experience earlier in my career where somebody came up to me and I didn't have what you had right there, which was the answer to the question, have you got, what's your book going to be about? And I'm like, oh, and I probably ran away. But also, I do think so, because I thought it was interesting you saying that you were originally going to write the book before your Cisco experience. And yet the Cisco experience and certainly the Valitor experience makes the book much richer, I think.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the experience that you had there really comes through.
Yeah, and I think we all have those self-limiting beliefs, I don't know everything about customer insight. How can I write a book on it?
Yeah.
And then I think, well, I probably know more than most because that was, it is a passion of mine, and I'm going to complement my own experiences with interviewing people who I consider to be the best in what they're doing. To really sort of bring it up to date. And it's not a Bible. It's not a definitive use. I mean, I could have written a book on each chapter, each chapter in the book, which is a sort of succinct topic. But it gives ideas, hopefully. And I've got a section at the end of each chapter. There's the key takeaways, but there's also a section called Feed Your Brain. And that gives people ideas about what they might do differently.
No, it's really good, and and you're absolutely right. I mean, before I pressed record, I was saying that about the book, in that a lot of books just focus on those individual silos of particular marketing practices. But I like the fact that you've kind of touched on all of them, but you've talked about data and insights along the way. What just to rewind back a bit? So you decided to do the doctorate in order to get the content for the book. How was that process of trying to juggle all that was going on in your life and doing a doctorate? Was that a long, hard process?
Yes, most people underestimate just how much it takes to do a doctorate, which is why most people don't finish them. And I was thrown a curveball I started it in October 2004, and at the time I was sponsored to do that by the company I was working for at the time, Extra Prize, and I went down to working 4 days a week and doing the doctorate. Of course, I underestimated how hard it was to do a job that I had done in 5 days a week and 4 days a week, and then literally every weekend, and that's a lot for a 4-year journey. And then 6 months into that journey, Extra Prize was acquired by another company, and they took all of the staff apart from the managing director, the finance director, and myself, which was the marketing director. And that it could have felt like the end of the world at that point, because I'd lost my job, I'd lost my sponsorship for the doctorate, and I could have just abandoned and gone and got another full-time job. And in actual fact, I had a really lovely job offer on the table, but I thought, well, maybe this is the chance to just do it differently. And I thought, I'm going to really focus on the doctorate. I will try and do it in 3 years instead of 4. And I will use my network to find some consultancy work to pay the bills. And that's what I did, and I really enjoyed the journey.
Nice.
It wasn't a chore because I made time for it.
Yeah, well, congratulations. I mean, you've done 2 amazing things, got a doctorate and written a book. That's amazing. So congratulations on that. When is the book published?
It's coming out on the 3rd of November. It should have been the 3rd of August, so you should have had the real thing by now, but of course COVID delayed everything, so the team were in furlough, but now it's all back on again. I'm finalising the proofread tomorrow, and 3rd of November. When it's you can already pre-order it on Amazon or on the Kogan Page website.
Excellent. Well, I'll include a link to that in the show notes, and also I'll include a link to, I presume, your presentation from B2B Ignite is somewhere out there on the interwebs, and I can include a link to that.
It is, yes.
Excellent. And then finally, as I ask everybody, and you're very familiar with this because we've gone backstage before, as it were, but only in the written form. We have our Rockstar CMO swimming pool, where we throw all the bullshit and snake oil and all the things we don't like about this wonderful industry that we love. When we spoke, I think it's about a year and a half, 2 years ago, you threw interruption marketing into the Rockstar swimming pool, which was fantastic. I mean, it really had to be done. Do you stick by that, or do you have a new candidate for the pool?
I'm going to stick by that, but I'm going to build on it.
Splendid. That's what I like to hear.
Do you know what? I thought of that recently. I'd just come back from a short break in Devon, and I was listening to the radio. And by the time I'd heard the same advert 20 times, it made me think of the of interruption. I absolutely did not want my music interrupted by that horrible ad. I'm not even going to say which ad it was for, because that will give it more airtime. But yes, so I still hate interruption marketing, but I'm going to build on that because, of course, data and insights is my thing. So I use the very famous quote in the book from John Wanamaker, who said way back when, I waste 50% of my advertising budget. I just don't know which half. I waste half, I don't know which half. So I'm going to throw spray and pray marketing. He didn't call it spray and pray marketing way back then, but that's what he was talking about. There's absolutely no excuse for spray and pray marketing in today's age. Everything has to be targeted, and everything has to be done with insights and with the end audience in mind.
Yeah, well, you've given the perfect blueprint, both with your presentation and with your upcoming book. So that's fantastic. Now, I'm going to include some links to those things in the show notes. But if people are looking out for you, Chris, where can they spin the dial on the interwebs? Where are they going to find you?
They're going to find me pretty easily on the interweb. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Dr. Christine (Chris Bailey) is where you'll find me. You'll find me on Twitter at Christine Bailey. I was on Twitter at right when it started, so hence I've got the handle Christine Bailey.
Nicely done.
You can find me on Instagram. Where else will you find me? Yeah, those are the main ones. Facebook I tend to use for personal use.
Yeah, and people that are interested in Valitor, obviously that's valitor.com.
Yes, you can find Valitor or valitor.com. You can find Valitor on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook.
Splendid. Splendid. Well, I think we'll have to have you back when the book gets published and we can dip into the pages properly without me giving away the plot. No spoilers. But very nice to speak to you, Christine. It's been a joy to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Christine. And of course, I'll include all the links we discussed, all of Christine's links, the presentation you gave at the B2B Virtual Ignite event, and of course, her book that is coming out in November that is available now for pre-order. Right. I realise that by the time the cogs of the podcasting machine gets this to you, it's probably not Friday. But for me, it most certainly is. And what better way to kick off the weekend than a cocktail and one marketing thought from my friend and content marketing guru, Robert Rose. So let's make our way to the Rockstar CMO virtual bar. Good evening, Robert. What are you drinking?
Oh, hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very
Well,
much.
I think this week is a fun one. This is one of those cocktails that, quite frankly, catches people's eye as you start walking around with it. So we call this a blueberry margarita.
Mm-hmm.
And like most of my cocktails, it has tequila in it, of course.
Yes.
But what we're talking about here is muddled blueberries, and a lot of them. And here's the fun thing about blueberries. When you muddle blueberries, they don't actually turn blue. They actually turn a very, very bright red purple.
Wow.
And if you muddle them and then put them into this drink with a little bit, just a little bit of orange juice to sweeten it up just a touch, and then of course top it off with a healthy dose of tequila, you've got yourself a summer drink that will literally light your way home if you need to.
Well, that sounds fantastic. Let's have a look at what we've got here. So I have now I think on a number of occasions we've discussed the fact that this gin that I have here, this Hendrix, is a good enough substitute, right? I think
I'm assuming.
You may not agree. Let's pour some of that in there. And then you said muddled blueberries.
That's right. You take a bunch of blueberries and muddle them up together. Literally, if you have like the mortar and pestle muddler, which is always nice, but otherwise you can just take a spoon and mush them up in a glass.
All right. What I have got is I've got a pre-prepared muddled bottle of tonic. It's a little muddled.
The bubbles might be a good substitute there. I think you might get away with that.
All right. Okay. Let me try this. I don't think it's got the same health. Oh, hang on a minute. I forgot the ice. Is there ice?
There is ice in this for sure. Okay. Absolutely.
Okay. Nice. Oh, that's nice. That is very nice. The color didn't come quite strong on my version as yours for some reason. So I might have to revisit that and try that again.
Right? Did yours clear? Yes, I'm assuming.
Yes. I didn't get any of that color you described.
It might be the tonic that you're using.
Okay. I shall look at that for future shows. Well, thank you very much. That's delicious. And I mean, as we've discussed, I could drink these every week, and I think that I would like to know where it is this week we're going to be drinking that.
I think this week I'm going to take you to a part of the world that I grew up in, and it's one of the really last bastions of what I remember Texas being like. Ooh. And there is a lake there, Lake Travis, which back when I was growing up as a kid, and I know they still do this, which is there was a thing we used to do out on the lake where we used to call it a redneck yacht club.
I love it already.
And which is basically what you do is you get a boat and you go out and you find a beautiful cove of a lake somewhere. And Lake Travis is quite a large lake. And you basically tie up sometimes 10, 15 boats together, put on some music, put on a barbecue, and basically have a little party out in the middle of the lake. And you do that in the late summer when, it's just, you do it in the evening, obviously, because it's just so hot during the day. And you swim and you have a barbecue and you party and you have music going and you drink a few of these, and it's a really nice time.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. And yes, and it's such a transformation from where I find myself anyway, right now, and socially distancing. Well, actually, the sun has come out in the UK today, but we'd had some. So I am completely transported to this place. So I guess the party has died down somewhat, and we're just chilling out with a couple of these cocktails. What are we chatting about?
The thing that's been on my mind lately, and I think it would be fun to chat about, especially as we get good and buzzed on these bright lights, is brand. And brand differentiation these days, and it's something I know is hot and heavy on people's minds, especially as we come out of this, the weirdness that is 2020, and thinking about differentiating our brand. And one of the things that I find is that we often go to the only, right? And what I mean by that is we are the only fill in the blank, right? We are the only fill in the blank that fill in the blank, right?
Yeah.
And we try to sort of rely on the only. And the interesting thing is that the more meaningful and actual that your only is, well, the quicker it can be copied. We're the only we're the only phone that has, 65 million colors. Well, that'll be copied next week, right? We are the only, enterprise software system that has X, Y, Z, and that'll be copied next week. But what can't be copied is some of the more, what would appear to be some of the more ephemeral things. Your story, your idea, what you stand for, the ideas you craft, and those stories people you tell are truly the thing that can't be copied. And so trying to figure out differentiation from that perspective is a really interesting exercise.
Yeah. I think, and you touched on the industry where I tend to work most of my career. And I think we sometimes swap out the only for leading. And the other thing that I always have a problem with when I'm talking to a vendor about when they say they're the only something is they're often the worst people to know to have competitive intelligence, right? People get carried away that they believe they're the only thing and that this is their differentiation and this is but the consumer doesn't see that in any way at all.
It's absolutely the I mean, you couldn't have said it any better, right? I mean, that's, we see that so often where what we think are important differentiators, the customer just doesn't even care about. I mean, the classic one, of course, is customer service, right? Where we're differentiating on something that the customer can absolutely have zero perspective on until they become a customer, right? Yeah. So it's an interesting challenge to figure out where are you actually going to differentiate.
Yeah. And also, doesn't it smacks of trust too, doesn't it? I mean, if you're going to make these bold statements and they can't be upheld, especially, as you say, the competition move very quickly to make you look a bit daft. I mean, that's one of my hobby horses is it undermines your trust, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly right. So you've got to live up to those ideas. And, there's all kinds of differentiation in product features and product benefits and, brand promises and those kinds of things. But when you start looking at standing up for ideas, for purpose, for points of view, for stories that you're going to tell, well, then you have to really, make sure that you live those stories too. So, because, anything that really smacks of distrust these days is, I think I saw some statistic. It was not that long ago. 47% of consumers now use the brand as a trust mechanism and the purpose and the ideas that brand stands for. And and this is the key, if the brand breaks those promises, another half of those will go away, will sort of move away from the brand, and 17% of those will never come back.
Right. And this isn't that brand purpose bullshit, is it? This is brand storytelling.
No, that's exactly fair enough. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And who do you think are good examples? Who's doing this really well in your experience?
Oh, I think probably, the example that comes leaping to mind, I'm not sure they're the best or worst at it, but the one that comes leaping to mind right now is REI, the sporting goods equipment, manufacturer, retailer. Things that they do right now, from the way that they've created their core brand story, and all the content that they create around that, from their co-op journal to their, focus on the outdoors and natural parks, and everything they're doing and saying just match perfectly with what with what their audience expects. Right.
And also with making them seem to be one of their audience, right? That creating that relevance with them and that relatability.
That's exactly right. Because they, by building their, what I might call an audience, some might call a community, some might call a tribe, some might call a, just a set of fanatics, whatever your word is, loyalty, evangelistic, the whatever that word is for you, that's our goal, right? That's our goal as marketers, is to create those people who will not only just sort of begrudgingly buy what we have, but will also be happy about it and share their experience, right? They're positive because they want to be associated with that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good thought. And I think we touched on this a couple of weeks ago about how brand will become more important when it comes to search with voice and stuff like that. I think that we're going to need people to search for us rather than just search for the generic term.
Oh, it's a great point. Yeah. We want them searching for us, not the, you and I did indeed have a discussion about this, but not just the category of what we belong to, but actually for us. That's true brand differentiation.
No, that's great. And I completely agree. And I think that's fantastic. And what a lovely thought, and what a lovely location to be having this thought. It would be wonderful to be there.
Club. I mean, come on, let's do it.
Yes. As soon as there are planes and people are allowed to spend time with each other and stuff. I
forgot about that part.
Yeah. And I'm sure that and where can people find more of these thoughts of yours, Robert?
Oh, that's wonderful for you to ask about that. The best place to find me is our website, which is www.contentadvisory.net, is where we're talking about all things related to content and content marketing and brand and digital and all those things.
Oh, splendid. All right. Well, thank you very much, Robert. And I'll see you next week.
Yes, you will.
Splendid. Thank you very much. Thank you, Robert. One thing I should have mentioned in our chat is the Content Tech Summit that he's hosting next week with the Content Marketing Institute. Go check that out at contenttechsummit.com. I know it's a bit short notice as it starts on Monday, but as it's a virtual event, maybe you can tag along last minute or something. I will include links to all of Robert's good stuff in the show notes, and sing along with me. You can find those at rockstarcmo.com/podcast. All right, then, that's it. The end of episode 22 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. And thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and driving along with us. Thanks again to our Rockstar CMO doctor, the wonderful Christine Bailey, to Robert Rose, and to our Rockstar CMO contributing community that make our publication what it is. But most of all, thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you like my guests, please give them a mention, click their links, follow them, and take a look at their work. I really appreciate their time, so show them some love. If you like the show, would like to help answer the question of whether the world needs another effing marketing podcast, drop us some feedback or a review, subscribe, share, or, well, just listen. I'm glad you're here. Next week, I'm chatting to Phil Lewis, founder and principal at Corporate Punk. I'll be honest, through the magic of podcasting, I've already recorded that interview this week. It's a really fascinating discussion that I hope you'll like, as I'm going to split it over 2 episodes, so you're going to have him for the next couple of weeks. The topic we explore is why CMOs don't make it to CEO, and it's really interesting. You get a sense of Phil and his work from the Corporate Punk website. It's very different, worth a look. Anyway, until then, I've been your host, Ian Truscott, founding editor of rockstarcmo.com, and I hope you'll join us again next week here at Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the boys' club of advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.